Miss, can you hide me? Please, don't tell my dad you saw me. The voice was barely louder than the rain. At first, Maya Williams thought she had misheard it, but when she turned, when her tired eyes adjusted to the streetlight glow outside Maple Diner, she saw her, a little girl, soaked through, sitting in an old wheelchair with one wheel bent, the fabric of the seat fraying like it had survived storms before tonight. A cheap poncho clung to her small frame, plastered to her glasses by the drizzle. In her trembling hands she held a piece of paper, smudged with water, two shaky letters still legible. Help! Maya's chest tightened. She had worked the closing shift before, but she had never stepped outside to this. It was past midnight. The street was empty except for humming street lamps, neon flickers, and the long shadow of the diner sign. No one should be here, least of all a child whispering like someone might be hunting her. Maya crouched low, apron still tied around her waist, heart hammering. Sweetheart, are you all right? Did you say your father? The girl shook her head quickly, wet bangs sticking to her forehead, eyes wide behind the glasses. Please, just don't tell him I'm here. Maya opened her mouth, but the words wouldn't come. This wasn't a lost child. This wasn't a late pickup. This was fear, the kind you don't fake. Maya inhaled sharply, steadying herself. Okay, first things first. Let's get you out of this rain. You're freezing. She moved behind the wheelchair, fingers gripping the wet metal handles. The girl tensed, but when Maya gently pressed forward, she didn't resist. The wheels squeaked over the cracked pavement as she pushed through the diner's glass door. Warmth rushed at them. Grilled onions, coffee, faint pie crust. The radiator hissed like an old friend. Maya quickly grabbed one of the flannel towels stacked behind the counter and draped it across the girl's shoulders. What's your name, honey? The girl's lips trembled. Laya. Laya, Maya repeated softly. Pretty name. My name's Maya Williams. She forced a small smile, crouching so their eyes met. And right now, Laya, you need something warm. In the fridge sat the sourdough bread Maya had hidden away for her own breakfast, her only decent meal planned for tomorrow. She stared at it for a moment, weighing hunger against the sight of the shivering child in front of her. No contest. Butter hit the skillet. Cheddar melted golden. Tomato soup warmed in a pot with a swirl of the cream Maya usually saved for her own coffee. Soon the scent filled the empty diner. Home, comfort, safety. She slid the plate in front of Laya, folding a napkin into the girl's lap like she was royalty. Grilled cheese and tomato soup. Simple but holy. Laya took a bite. Her eyes widened, tears mixing with rain. She whispered through a mouthful of bread, "This is the best sandwich I've ever had." Maya chuckled softly, leaning against the counter. "That's because you haven't tried the peach pie yet." For the first time, the girl smiled. The bell above the diner door stayed silent. The street outside looked calm again. Slick pavement, reflections of neon puddles. Maya exhaled, almost believing the storm had passed. But something prickled at her neck. Out of habit, she glanced toward the wide diner window. Across the street, just beyond the halo of a broken lamp, a black SUV idled quietly. Headlights off, engine humming low. Her stomach tightened. Someone was inside, watching. The little girl kept eating, oblivious. But Maya could feel the weight of unseen eyes pressing through the glass. Cold, calculating, patient. She didn't know if it was the father Leia feared or someone worse. Either way, she whispered to herself, something ain't right.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the bell so you won't miss what's next.
By the time Maya Williams made it home, her shoes squelched with every step. The bus ride had been long, her jacket still damp, and her arms ached from carrying grocery bags filled with the bare minimum: milk, bread, her mother's medicine. Her building rose tired against the night. Paint peeled from the brick. The hallway bulb flickered like a failing star, and the air carried the scent of boiled cabbage from someone's kitchen. Maya slipped her key into the lock of her third-floor apartment, careful not to wake her mother or her brother Malik. Inside, silence greeted her. The oxygen machine in her mother's room pulsed softly, a steady rhythm of breath. Malik's school books were scattered across the couch, his young body curled under a blanket, fast asleep. Maya set the groceries on the counter, rubbed her temples, and exhaled. One more day survived. Then, 3 knocks. Sharp, echoing, too confident to be a neighbor. Her pulse jumped. Nobody knocked this late. Not here. Not like that. She froze in the middle of the kitchen, breath caught in her throat. Another knock. Slower this time, like whoever stood outside knew she was listening. Maya crept to the door, bare feet silent on the linoleum, and pressed her eye to the peephole. A man stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, his dark coat buttoned to the neck, collar lifted against the drizzle. His shoes, polished, dry, too perfect for her cracked hallway. Her stomach clenched. Whoever he was, he didn't belong here. Maya's voice came low, tight. "Who is it?" A pause, then a deep, controlled voice. "Thomas Grayson." The name meant nothing to her, yet the way he said it, steady, rehearsed, like anyone should recognize it, made her skin prickle. Maya kept the chain lock on, opening the door just a crack. The hallway light flickered across his face. Square jaw, clean-shaven, eyes that didn't blink much, gray, focused, and unsettling in their stillness. He looked like someone who belonged on the cover of a business magazine, or maybe standing at a podium with cameras flashing. But here he was, in her hallway, at midnight. "You shouldn't be here," Maya said flatly. "You're right," Thomas Grayson replied, voice calm. "But I saw what you did tonight." Her heart jolted. "You mean the girl?" "My daughter," he said simply. "Laya." Maya's hand tightened on the chain. She remembered the shaky letters on the rain-soaked paper. Help. She remembered the fear in Laya's eyes. And now this man, claiming her, stood in front of her with no apology, no explanation. "What do you want?" Maya asked. Thomas reached into his coat and pulled out a thick envelope. He held it steady like an offering. "I don't believe in charity," he said. "I believe in paying debts. And you're owed something." Maya narrowed her eyes. "You trying to pay me for feeding your daughter?" His lips twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. "No, I'm offering you a job." Silence thickened in the hallway. Malik stirred on the couch behind her. The oxygen machine hummed in the bedroom. Maya's heart hammered like it wanted out of her chest. A job? From a man who looked like money itself? She laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "That's rich." "I'm serious," Thomas said, unflinching. "You have instincts. The way you looked at Laya, the way you looked at that woman who came for her." His eyes narrowed. "You didn't trust her." "I was right not to," Maya said carefully. Thomas tilted his head slightly, studying her as if she were a puzzle he meant to solve. "Exactly. That's why I want you working for me." Maya leaned against the doorframe, crossing her arms. "And what kind of job are we talking about? Cleaning up after your messes? Babysitting your investors?" Thomas's expression didn't change. "Public engagement manager at Grayson Technologies. You'd report directly to me." The words rang absurd in this hallway with peeling paint. Her apartment rent was overdue. Her mother's medicine supply was fragile. Her little brother's textbooks were secondhand. And now this man spoke to her like she belonged in a glass tower with people who wore watches worth more than her year's salary. Maya's throat tightened. "Let me guess. No degree required?" "I don't care about your degree," Thomas replied. His voice had no arrogance, just finality. "I care about your judgment. You see things people don't, and you make people feel safe without trying." Maya glanced at the envelope in his hand. Heavy. The kind of paper that carried contracts, not casual offers. She thought about the gas bill crumpled on the counter, her mother's oxygen tank that needed replacing, Malik's hopeful face when he talked about college. But her voice stayed steady. "Why me?" Thomas's gaze shifted, and for the first time something softened in his face. Barely. "Because you saw my daughter," he said quietly. "Not my money, not my name. Just her." Maya swallowed hard. Her eyes burned, though she didn't let them fall. She slowly reached out and took the envelope from his hand. "I'll think about it," she whispered. Thomas gave a single nod, then turned without another word. His footsteps echoed down the hallway, fading into silence. Maya closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it with the envelope pressed to her chest. Her breath came shallow. Her heart raced. The oxygen machine hummed in her mother's room. Malik mumbled in his sleep, and Maya Williams whispered to the empty apartment, "What did I just step into?" The morning light slipped through the thin curtains like it was too tired to shine. Maya Williams stood in the kitchen, staring at the envelope on the table. It lay there like a silent dare. Thomas Grayson's neat handwriting on the corner, heavy with a promise she hadn't opened yet. But first, her mother. Always her mother. She moved quietly down the short hallway and pushed open the cracked door. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and stale fabric. On the bed lay Gloria Williams, her once strong mother, now a shadow of herself. The oxygen machine hissed beside her like a metronome, each sound reminding Maya of the thin thread holding her mother here. "Mama?" Maya whispered. Gloria's eyes fluttered open, cloudy but warm. "You're home." Her voice was papery thin. "I am," Maya said softly, adjusting the blankets. She set down the small paper bag from the clinic. Insulin vials, syringes, the same ritual that had drained Maya's paychecks for years. She checked the schedule taped to the wall, marked with careful notes and times. If she missed even one pickup, her mother's body would remind them all of the cost. Gloria reached for her hand. "You look tired, baby." Maya forced a smile. "I'm fine." "You always say that," Gloria whispered. Her thumb brushed against Maya's knuckles. "But fine doesn't mean happy." Maya's throat tightened. She wanted to tell her about the man in the hallway, the offer that could change everything. But the words felt too heavy, too unreal to place here in this room filled with tubes and quiet suffering. Instead, she kissed her mother's forehead. "Rest. I'll make breakfast." Gloria smiled faintly, eyes closing again. The oxygen machine hummed on, and Maya walked back into the kitchen, where the envelope still waited like a storm cloud on the table. The sound of a door slamming pulled Maya from her thoughts. A moment later, Malik Williams shuffled into the kitchen, backpack sliding off one shoulder, hair sticking up in every direction. 14 years old, lanky, still caught between boy and young man. "Morning," he mumbled, rubbing his eyes. "Morning," Maya said, forcing lightness. She slid a piece of toast his way. He sat down, chewing absently, eyes drifting to the envelope on the table. "What's that?" Maya hesitated. "Just paperwork." Malik raised an eyebrow. He wasn't dumb. If anything, he was sharper than she'd ever been at his age. "Doesn't look like diner paperwork." Maya smirked despite herself. "Eat your breakfast." Malik grinned, but his smile faded fast. "Hey, Maya?" His voice dropped, almost shy. "Do you think I could still go to college?" The question hit her like a fist. She stared at him, the way his eyes flickered with hope and fear at the same time. He wanted to believe, but he'd seen the bills stacked on the counter. He knew the weight of their life. "You're smart enough," Maya said quickly. "Smarter than me." "That's not what I asked." His voice cracked a little. "I mean, with money, with Mom being sick, with you working all the time. Is it even possible?" Maya swallowed hard. She wanted to lie. She wanted to say yes, of course. Don't worry. But the truth was cruel. She reached across the table, gripping his hand. "We'll figure it out. Together." Malik nodded slowly, but his eyes still carried doubt. He stuffed the last bite of toast into his mouth, slung his backpack over his shoulder, and kissed her cheek on his way out. "I'll try extra hard in math today." When the door shut, Maya pressed her hands against her face. His dream of college felt like a balloon she was barely keeping from popping. And that envelope, it whispered promises she wasn't sure she could trust. By late afternoon, the diner shift called again. Maya scrubbed counters, refilled coffee, smiled at customers who never looked twice at the name on her apron. But every time she glanced toward the clock, her thoughts spun back to the envelope waiting at home. What if it was real? What if she could make more in 1 year than she had in the last 5 combined? What if she could pay the rent, replace her mother's tank, give Malik the chance to step onto a college campus with his head held high? And what if it wasn't? What if Thomas Grayson was just testing her, dangling a dream she had no right to touch? That night, after Malik fell asleep with his math book open on his chest and Gloria's oxygen machine hissed steady in the other room, Maya sat at the table alone. The envelope lay in front of her. Her fingers traced the edges. She didn't open it. She couldn't. Not yet. Her mind was too loud, too full. She remembered Laya's frightened eyes, the paper that read, "Help," the way Thomas Grayson had spoken like every word he said was already law. Maya whispered into the empty room, "I can't walk away from this, but I don't know if I can walk into it either." The clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. The weight of her family pressed on her chest like an anchor. She pressed the envelope flat against the table and closed her eyes. Tomorrow. She'd decide tomorrow. Maya Williams had seen skyscrapers before, but never like this. Grayson Tower loomed over the city like a blade of glass, sharp, endless, reflecting the gray sky back on itself. As she approached, her palms dampened against the straps of her bag. The revolving doors spun in a rhythm too quick, too polished for her to follow without hesitation. Inside, the air changed, cold, controlled. The scent wasn't coffee and grease like Maple Diner. It was lemon polish, steel, and ambition. Every surface gleamed. Even the silence felt expensive. Maya stepped onto the marble floor, her sneakers squeaking faintly, out of place against the smooth shine. Her reflection followed her across walls of glass, whispering what she already knew. She didn't belong here. The receptionist looked up, a polite smile plastered on. "Welcome to Grayson Technologies. Name?" "Maya Williams," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The receptionist typed quickly, then nodded. "Mr. Grayson is expecting you. 14th floor." The elevator doors opened with a soft hiss, swallowing her into its mirrored walls. She caught her own eyes in the reflection, tired, determined, and terrified. "Breathe," she whispered to herself. "Just breathe." When the doors slid open again, the 14th floor greeted her with sharp lines of desks, muted artwork, and the faint hum of machines. Conversations hushed as she stepped out. Dozens of eyes lifted from laptops, scanning her like she was a glitch in their system. Maya smoothed her jacket, held her chin high, and walked forward. At the far end of the glass corridor, a door stood taller than the others. Nora Silver, the assistant she'd met briefly by phone, was waiting, tall, perfectly tailored, expression unreadable. "This way." Maya followed, her heartbeat loud in her ears. Inside the office, Thomas Grayson sat behind a desk that looked more like an altar. Dark wood polished to perfection, walls of glass behind him revealing the city stretched endlessly below. He didn't stand. He didn't need to. His presence filled the room without effort. "Miss Williams," he said, his voice steady. "Welcome." Maya swallowed, forcing herself to nod. "Thank you for having me." Thomas gestured toward a conference table where half a dozen executives waited, each dressed in shades of authority. Suits, watches, pens that probably cost more than Maya's month's rent. "This is Maya Williams," Thomas announced. "She'll be working with us on community engagement." The room shifted. Polite smiles, quick glances, thinly veiled skepticism. To them, she was nobody. Worse than nobody. A waitress in their cathedral of glass. One man muttered, "Community engagement?" like it was a punchline. Another raised an eyebrow, tapping a silver pen against the table. Maya's throat tightened, but she sat down anyway. Thomas continued without pause, flipping through charts, statistics, projections. Numbers lit up on the screen behind him. The executives nodded in rhythm, as if worshiping at the altar of data. Maya sat still, her mind buzzing. She thought of Laya in the rain. She thought of the help note. These men didn't know that girl, didn't see her, only what her father's empire could leverage. The air in the room pressed heavy on her shoulders. When the meeting ended, the executives filed out with murmured goodbyes, their eyes lingering on Maya with the same curiosity one might give a stray dog brought into a penthouse. Only Nora Silver remained. She closed the door gently, then turned to face Maya. The room seemed to grow colder. Nora's voice was smooth, practiced, the kind that cut without raising its volume. "You won't last here." Maya blinked. "Excuse me." Nora's eyes sharpened. "You don't belong in this tower. People like you never do. This place eats the soft ones alive. Maya straightened, heat rising in her chest. People like me? You think being kind makes you valuable? Nora said, her tone still calm, almost clinical. It doesn't. Not here. Kindness is weakness in a company that bleeds profit. If you're smart, you'll walk away before they use you as a face and then discard you. Maya clenched her fists. She remembered Malik's question. Will I ever go to college? She remembered her mother's thin breath, the oxygen machine that kept her alive. I don't scare easy, Maya whispered. Nora tilted her head, a small, humorless smile tugging at her lips. We'll see. But mark my words, Maya Williams. You are temporary. With that, she turned on her heel and left, the echo of her heels clicking sharp across the marble. Maya stood alone in the glass office, staring out at the city below. The tower loomed around her, cold and vast. And she whispered almost to herself, they think I don't belong. Maybe that's exactly why I'm here. Maya Williams sat at her small cubicle, still getting used to the hum of the office around her. The walls of Grayson Tower gleamed like everything here had been scrubbed of human fingerprints. Too smooth, too polished. Her desk, though modest, had already been stacked with folders, binders, and emails blinking on the screen like impatient requests. Carlos, the community liaison, had dropped by earlier with a tired smile, encouraging her. You'll do fine, Maya. Just read carefully. Around here, nothing is as simple as it looks. At first, she thought he meant the corporate jargon, but as the day stretched on, she began to feel something else. Eyes watching, whispers drifting behind glass doors. By late afternoon, Nora Silver appeared, tall, poised, sharp as a blade. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Maya Williams, she said crisply, laying a slim folder on her desk. Routine paperwork. Just sign and return before the end of the day. Maya nodded, fingers brushing the folder. Nora leaned in slightly, her perfume sharp, her voice even sharper. These things matter. A signature means loyalty. It means you understand how we work here. Then she was gone, heels clicking, silence swallowing the space she left behind. Maya opened the folder. Inside were neatly typed pages, the kind she'd seen passed around in the morning meeting. But halfway through, a section caught her eye. The language twisted strangely. Phrases about community outreach, data management, a clause about repurposing survey information for strategic leverage. Her stomach clenched. This wasn't just paperwork, it was permission. Permission to turn people's voices into numbers. Numbers that could be sold. And she was supposed to sign it. Maya leaned back in her chair, the fluorescent light buzzing above her. Her mind churned. If she signed, it would be easy. No questions. She'd look like she belonged, like she was loyal. Malik could have his college savings. Her mother could have her medicine. Rent would no longer scrape at her soul. But something in her resisted. She remembered the rec center walls, children drawing their dreams in crayon, the old woman whispering about safety at the bus stop. These weren't data points. They were people. Her throat tightened. She whispered under her breath, "This is a trap." Maya picked up a pen, hovering it over the signature line. Her hand trembled. The words blurred as if daring her. Sign and be safe, or refuse and be marked. She imagined Nora Silver waiting, that cold half-smile ready to cut her down. Maybe that was the point. Maybe Nora wanted her gone, and this was the way. Maya closed her eyes. Malik's face flickered behind her eyelids. Do you think I could still go to college? Her mother's voice echoed, weak but steady. Fine doesn't mean happy. Her chest burned. Finally, Maya lowered the pen, not to sign, but to circle one of the clauses in red ink. Then another, then another. She scribbled questions in the margins. Who benefits from this data? How will this be used? Why isn't this disclosed? By the time she finished, the once pristine document was marked with her handwriting, raw and unafraid. When Nora Silver returned, her expression unreadable, she lifted the folder with 2 fingers like it was fragile glass. She opened it, scanned the pages. Her eyes flicked to Maya. You didn't sign, Nora said flatly. Maya forced her voice to stay calm. I had questions. Big ones. Silence stretched. The hum of the office felt louder, the glass walls reflecting their faces like a courtroom. Nora's lips curved, but not into a smile. More like a blade unsheathed. You think this makes you clever? It makes me careful, Maya replied softly. The two women stared at each other, one polished, controlled, icy, the other standing on nerves but refusing to bend. A new voice broke the silence. Thomas Grayson had stepped into the corridor, watching them both. His gray eyes moved from Nora to Maya, then to the folder in her hands. She didn't sign, he asked. No, Nora replied smoothly. She questioned. Thomas walked closer, lifted the folder, and read the red ink marks. His jaw twitched once, but his voice stayed level. Good. Nora's eyes widened, barely, but enough. Thomas handed the folder back to Maya. This was a test. Most people sign without looking. But you didn't. You saw people, not paper. Maya's breath shook in her chest. Relief and fear tangled inside her. Nora's expression hardened into ice, but Thomas only nodded once to Maya. You passed. Remember? Here, loyalty isn't blind. It's earned. As he walked away, Maya caught Nora's cold gaze. It said everything words didn't. This isn't over. And in that moment, Maya understood. Her first test wasn't about paperwork. It was about survival. The apartment smelled faintly of onions and soap when Maya Williams returned that evening. She kicked off her shoes, hung her jacket on the chair, and dropped her bag beside the table. The envelope from Thomas Grayson still sat on the counter, unopened but heavy with meaning, like it had been watching her all day. Malik Williams was already at the table, hunched over a workbook. His pencil tapped against the page, his brows knit tight. When Maya walked in, he looked up, his eyes tired but hopeful. You're late, Malik said, but there was no sting in his voice, just the gentle complaint of a little brother who waited for his sister to come home. Work, Maya sighed, pulling out a chair. Always work, he shrugged. That's life, huh? Not all of it, Maya said firmly. She tapped his notebook. What are you working on? Math, Malik muttered. College prep stuff. He hesitated, then pushed the book toward her. Do you think I can really make it? Like, actually go? The question hit Maya deep, the same way it had the last time he asked. She saw the doubt in his eyes, the weight he carried even at 14, an age when he should be thinking about basketball games, not bills and medical schedules. You're smart enough, Maya said quickly. More than smart enough. But smart doesn't mean money, Malik whispered. Maya's chest tightened. She wanted to say yes. It's possible. Don't worry. But the truth was crueler. She thought of the bills stacked on the counter, her mother's fragile health, the way every dollar slipped through her hands before she could save it. Instead, she leaned closer, meeting his eyes. We'll find a way, I promise. I don't know how yet, but I won't let you lose this dream. Malik's shoulders relaxed a little. He gave her a crooked smile, the kind that reminded her of their father when he was still around. Then I'll keep working. I'll keep trying. Maya ruffled his hair. That's all I ask. Later that night, after Malik had settled into the couch with his homework, Maya slipped out to visit Miss Evelyn Parker, their elderly neighbor who lived down the hall. Evelyn had been in Maya's life since childhood, the retired teacher who'd once tutored her in reading and insisted that words carried power. Maya knocked softly, and Evelyn opened the door wearing her familiar gray cardigan, glasses perched low on her nose. The apartment smelled of lemon polish and black coffee, shelves lined with books that leaned against each other like old friends. Child, Evelyn said with a knowing smile, you look like someone carrying two worlds on her back. Maya laughed, though it came out hollow. That's weirdly accurate. Sit, Evelyn said, waving her to the armchair by the heater. Tell me. So Maya did. She spoke about the diner, about the little girl in the rain, about Thomas Grayson and the impossible job offer. She told her about the folder Nora Silver had slipped her, about the red ink and the narrow escape from the trap. When she finally fell silent, Evelyn sipped her coffee slowly. You ever think, she said softly, That maybe you do belong in that tower, and they just don't know it yet? Maya blinked. Belong? Evelyn, I'm a waitress from Newark. I don't belong in glass rooms with men who wear watches more expensive than my rent. The world won't hand you a seat at the table, Evelyn replied. Sometimes you bring your own chair. And you make damn sure it doesn't fold when you sit. Maya looked down at her hands. They were calloused from work, cracked from cleaning chemicals, strong from years of carrying too much. Evelyn reached over, resting her hand gently on Maya's. Fear likes to dress up as wisdom, but you're allowed to want more. That doesn't make you greedy, it makes you ready. Maya's eyes burned, though she blinked the tears back. For a moment she felt like a child again, listening to Evelyn's lessons in the rec center, where every word felt like a key she hadn't known she needed. Back at home, the apartment was warm with the sound of Malik humming softly as he finished his homework. Their mother, Gloria Williams, stirred from her room, shuffling slowly into the kitchen. Mama, you should be resting, Maya said quickly, helping her into a chair. I've rested enough, Gloria said with a faint smile. I want to sit with my children. Maya plated the simple dinner she'd managed to throw together. Rice, beans, and a little chicken Malik had picked up from the store. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm. They sat together at the small wooden table, steam rising from the plates. Malik cracked a joke about his math teacher, doing an impression so spot on that even Gloria laughed until her shoulders shook. Maya joined in, the sound filling the apartment like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. For the first time in days, Maya felt a small, pure joy. She looked across the table at her family, her mother's frail smile, Malik's eager eyes, the laughter that made their cramped apartment feel like home. For a moment, she let herself breathe. Let herself imagine a future where dinners like this weren't stolen between storms, but part of a steady, safe life. When Malik reached across the table to grab another helping, his hand brushed hers. We're going to be okay, Maya, he said softly. She nodded, whispering back, Yes, we will. Outside, the city's noise hummed on. But inside there was warmth, laughter, and love, the kind of foundation that no tower of glass could ever build. The morning began with a ping, one email that changed everything. Maya Williams sat at her desk, coffee still steaming in her cup, when the subject line flashed across her screen. Urgent, data breach. Her heart skipped. She clicked. The email was short, clinical, terrifying. Sensitive material from yesterday's meeting has been exposed. The investigation is underway. Individuals with access will be reviewed. Her throat went dry. Yesterday's meeting? She had shared the updated outreach deck with the council, just like Thomas Grayson had asked. But that was it. She hadn't sent it anywhere else. Still, her chest tightened with dread. She pictured the folder, the slides, the photo of little Leia in the rain she had slipped in. Too human, too real for the world of metrics. Whispers spread through the office like wildfire. Heads lifted from laptops, eyes darted over cubicle walls. Maya felt their stares, heavy and accusing. She kept her hands still on the keyboard, though her fingers itched to tremble. Then she saw her. Nora Silver. The assistant's gaze lingered across the glass corridor. She wasn't whispering. She wasn't nervous. She was smiling, just a faint curve of the lips, enough to say, I told you. You don't belong here. Maya's stomach turned. At precisely 10 o'clock, Maya was escorted into a room she had never seen before. A cold, low-lit chamber tucked behind the server racks. The hum of machines echoed like a heartbeat. A man waited for her at the table, stern-faced, neat suit, ID badge clipped to his belt. Agent Patel, Internal Security. His tone was clipped, all business. Maya sat, back straight though her pulse thundered. Nora Silver stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching like a shadow that wouldn't leave. Agent Patel slid a printout across the table. These are the access logs. Your credentials opened the folder. The file was copied. Can you explain that? Maya leaned forward, scanning the sheet. The times matched her actions. She had uploaded the deck to the Outreach Council's shared drive. She remembered the click, the confirmation window. I sent it to the council, she said, forcing her voice steady. Like I was told. I didn't send it anywhere else. Patel studied her face. You realize how serious this is? If external parties accessed it, they didn't, Maya interrupted. Then softer. Did they? Patel tapped the screen of his laptop. So far, no evidence of outside leaks. But perception matters. That word again. Perception. It stung worse than accusation. Behind him, Nora Silver shifted, the faintest smirk playing at her lips. Maya's jaw clenched. This wasn't about files. It was about trust. And someone wanted her gone. The questioning dragged on for an hour. Every step retraced, every click examined. Maya's answers stayed calm, consistent. Still, the weight pressed down. By the end, Patel leaned back, his tone softening slightly. You're not in trouble, for now, he said. But you need to be careful. Around here, one mistake becomes your reputation. Maya nodded, though her chest burned. When she stepped back into the hallway, the world seemed sharper, colder. Whispers followed her like echoes. She walked fast, but Nora Silver was already there, waiting at the end of the corridor. Nora didn't say anything. She didn't have to. That faint smile curved her lips again, polished and poisonous. Maya stopped just short of her. You think this scares me? She asked quietly. Nora tilted her head. It should. Maya's pulse hammered. She wanted to shout, to accuse, to demand proof, but all she did was straighten her shoulders. Then watch, she whispered. Watch me stay. Nora's eyes glinted, the smile never fading. We'll see. As Maya walked away, the tower felt like it was closing in on her, glass and steel pressing from every side. But deep inside, a fire kindled. She wasn't going to fold. Not here. Not now. And if Nora Silver thought this little storm would break her, she was about to learn otherwise. The Jefferson Recreation Center smelled of old paint and coffee when Maya Williams walked in that morning. The walls were cracked, the floor linoleum worn to a dull shine, but the room was alive, children coloring at folding tables, parents chatting in small circles, a pastor leaning on his cane by the door. Carlos, the community liaison, met her with a nod. Thanks for coming early, he said. His voice was tired but steady. Thanks for having me, Maya replied, smoothing her jacket, trying to shake off the weight of the week. The leak, the stares, Nora Silver's smile. By 9 o'clock, the council members had arrived. Local residents filled the chairs, their eyes fixed on her, curious, cautious, a little guarded. Carlos stood at the front and cleared his throat. Friends, this is Maya Williams. She's the new public engagement officer at Grayson Technologies. The room shifted. Some faces softened with interest. Others tightened with suspicion. Maya stepped forward, her palms damp. She let the silence breathe for a moment, then spoke, her voice low but clear. I grew up in Newark. I know what it feels like to wonder if the lights on your street will flicker out before you make it home. I know what it's like when your family has to choose between bills and medicine. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to listen. The room stayed quiet, but something loosened in the air. Just a fraction. One by one, voices began to rise. An older woman raised her hand first. We need streetlights. My grandkids can't walk to the bus stop without me following them with a flashlight. It's dangerous. A man in a pressed shirt added, There's no grocery store nearby, just corner shops that sell junk. My wife spends more time waiting at food banks than she does with our kids. A young mother spoke next, holding her toddler close. The playground's broken, rust everywhere. I'd rather keep my boy inside than risk him falling on those jagged swings. As they spoke, Maya didn't just jot notes. She met their eyes. She let their words sink into her chest. She wrote down every detail, but more importantly, she listened, really listened. She heard the pastor describe how kids skipped after-school programs because the center's lights were out. She heard a teacher talk about how students showed up hungry, distracted, already losing hope before class even began. The room filled with layers of grief, anger, frustration, exhaustion. But underneath it all, there was something else, a thread of determination. Maya realized these people weren't voiceless. They had been speaking all along. No one had chosen to hear them. When the meeting wound down, Maya stood again. Her notebook was thick with scribbles, her heart heavier, but steadier. "You've given me more than notes," she said softly. "You've given me truth. I can't promise to fix everything overnight, but I can promise this. Your words won't stay in this room. They'll travel with me into every meeting, every decision, every corner of Grayson Tower." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the older woman who had first mentioned the streetlights nodded slowly. "Maybe we can trust you. Just don't disappear on us." Maya's throat tightened. "I won't." Carlos watched her with quiet pride. The council members began to gather their things, the children pulling at their coats, the pastor giving her a small, approving nod. As Maya stepped outside into the fading afternoon light, she felt the air different around her. The city still carried its weight. Sirens, cracked sidewalks, shadows gathering under dim lamps. But inside her chest, something had shifted. This wasn't just about surviving a job. This wasn't about proving herself to Thomas Grayson or fighting Nora Silver's traps. This was about voices that had been ignored for too long, about building light in places that had lived in darkness. Maya whispered to herself as she walked toward the bus stop, notebook clutched to her chest. "This is bigger than an office. This is a mission." And for the first time since stepping into the tower, she felt steady. The glass-walled conference room stretched like a stage, every polished surface reflecting doubt. Executives filled the long table, men and women in dark suits, their pens tapping, eyes sharp with skepticism. At the head sat Thomas Grayson, silent, unreadable, his hands folded neatly on the desk. Maya Williams sat at the far end, her notebook open, her heart pounding against her ribs. This was the moment, her first chance to present what she'd gathered from the Jefferson Rec Center. Real voices, real needs. She stood, her palms damp but steady. She spread photos across the table. Kids with backpacks under broken street lamps, mothers standing outside food banks, elders sitting in dim church halls. Each image was alive with a story. "These aren't statistics," Maya said softly, letting the room quiet. "These are lives." An executive cleared his throat. "We asked for projections, Miss Williams, not a scrapbook." A ripple of laughter followed, not cruel but dismissive, condescending. Maya's chest burned. She saw Nora Silver in the corner, her arms folded, her face perfectly neutral, but her eyes gleamed with satisfaction. The dismissals came quick, like stones thrown from every side. "This isn't scalable. Where's the ROI?" These stories tug at the heart, but they don't move markets. Each voice chipped away at her. Maya gripped the edge of the table, hearing her brother's question. "Do you think I can really go to college?" Her mother's whisper. "Fine doesn't mean happy." She straightened her shoulders. "With respect," she said, her voice firmer now, "ROI isn't the only measure that matters. Trust is." A few heads turned. The laughter softened into silence. Maya pushed the photos forward. "That grandmother who follows her grandkids with a flashlight because there are no streetlights? That's not a number. That's fear. And when we dismiss it as data, we tell her she doesn't matter." Nora's lips twitched, the faintest shadow of disapproval. Maya continued, her voice trembling but strong. "These people don't need marketing campaigns. They need to feel safe walking home. They need food stores within reach. They need dignity. If Grayson Technologies wants to matter, to really matter, then we can't afford to look at them as numbers. We have to see them as people." For a long moment, the room was silent. Pens stopped tapping. No one laughed. The air was heavy, waiting. Then Thomas Grayson spoke. His voice was even, but something in it carried weight. "She's right." Every head turned. Nora's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Thomas leaned forward, his gray eyes fixed on the photos spread across the table. "We've been chasing numbers for years, but numbers don't call us at midnight. Numbers don't wait in the rain. People do. And if this company forgets that, then we have nothing." Maya's breath caught in her chest. For the first time, he wasn't the unreadable billionaire watching from a distance. He was a father, a leader, a man who understood what she had seen in the rain that night. The executives shifted uncomfortably, some nodding, others resisting. but the laughter was gone. Thomas turned to Maya. Prepare a pilot program. Start small. Show us what trust looks like in action. Her throat tightened. Yes, sir. He corrected her gently. Thomas. She nodded, her heart trembling. Yes, Thomas. As the meeting ended, Maya gathered her photos, her hands shaking not with fear, but with something new. Resolve. She glanced once at Nora Silver. The assistant's expression was smooth, professional, but her eyes burned cold. This battle wasn't over, but for the first time, Maya wasn't alone. The rec center smelled of rain-soaked coats and instant coffee. Maya Williams walked in with her notebook clutched to her chest, ready for another listening session. She had started to recognize faces. The grandmother who spoke about the bus stop, the young mother with the toddler, the tired teacher. And among them was Harold Green, a respected community leader, the kind of man who always sat up front, nodding thoughtfully at every word. Evening, Maya, Harold said warmly as she entered. His voice always carried weight, the kind that steadied a room. She trusted him. She had even told him so once. Tonight, though, something felt different. Conversations hushed as she approached. A few eyes darted away, whispers curling like smoke. She frowned, settling her bag by the chair. Then the first accusation dropped. She's here for the money, a voice muttered from the back. Another joined in. Yeah, Grayson's just paying her to make us quiet. Maya froze. The room buzzed with murmurs, suspicion spreading like a storm. She looked to Harold for support. He would calm them. He always did. But instead, he raised his hand, his voice carrying. Maybe they're right, Harold said. Maybe Maya Williams doesn't speak for us. Maybe she's just here to polish Grayson's name. The words cut deeper than any boardroom laughter. Maya's chest burned. She stood slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. Is that what you believe? She asked, her voice trembling. That I came here to profit from your pain? Harold didn't flinch. His tone was calm, too calm. We've seen people like you before. Promise change, take their paycheck, disappear. How are you different? The crowd murmured in agreement. Faces that had once looked at her with trust now stared with doubt. Maya's throat tightened. She thought of the grandmother with the flashlight, the young mother with the broken playground. These were the people she wanted to fight for, and now they looked at her like she was a stranger. I've shared your stories in rooms that don't want to hear them, Maya said softly. I've risked my job, my reputation. And yet you still get paid, Harold interrupted, his voice slicing clean. Tell me, Maya Williams, what's the difference between your paycheck and a bribe? The words hung heavy, cruel, final. She had no answer. The session ended in a haze of silence and suspicion. Maya packed her notebook slowly, each page feeling heavier than the last. No one stopped her. No one thanked her. The grandmother wouldn't meet her eyes. The young mother turned her face away. Outside, the night air was sharp, cold against her cheeks. She walked fast, her steps unsteady, her vision blurred by unshed tears. On the bus ride home, she stared at her reflection in the dark window. Harold's words echoed mercilessly. What's the difference between your paycheck and a bribe? For the first time since this began, she wondered if Nora Silver had been right all along, if she really didn't belong in that tower, or here, or anywhere. When she reached the apartment, Malik was already asleep, his books spread across the couch. Her mother's oxygen machine hummed softly from the bedroom. Normally that sound grounded her. Tonight it only reminded her how fragile everything was. She sat at the kitchen table, head in her hands, the city's noise pressing against the thin walls. For the first time, Maya whispered the words she had never allowed herself to say. I want to quit. The silence that followed felt heavier than the storm. The Grayson Tower office was almost empty when Maya Williams stepped off the elevator late that evening. The glass corridors hummed with silence, lights dimmed, the city glowing faintly beyond the walls. She had been summoned, not to a meeting, not to a conference room, but to Thomas Grayson's private office. When she entered, she found something she hadn't expected. Not a boardroom of executives, not Nora Silver standing like a shadow, just Thomas Grayson and his daughter. Leah Grayson sat curled in her wheelchair by the wide window, her glasses slipping down her nose, a book resting unopened on her lap. Her small fingers fidgeted with the edge of her blanket. Maya hesitated, but Thomas gestured quietly. "She asked for you," he said, his voice lower than usual. Maya crossed the room, kneeling beside Laya. "Hey, sunshine," she whispered. "What's on your mind?" For a long moment, the girl just stared at the city lights. Then so quietly that Maya had to lean closer, Laya spoke. "Miss Maya, I was scared. I thought Daddy was going to send me away, to a boarding school, or an institution." Maya's chest tightened. She glanced at Thomas. His expression was frozen, unreadable. But his jaw twitched just once. Laya's voice shook. "I thought he didn't want me anymore." The words fell into the room like stones dropped into deep water. The silence after was louder than any argument. Thomas Grayson stood near his desk, his hand pressed to the back of his chair, as if steadying himself. For once he looked less like a billionaire carved from steel, and more like a father who had just heard the most painful truth of his life. "Laya," his voice broke slightly. It was the first time Maya had ever heard that crack in his tone. "Why would you think that?" The girl's eyes filled with tears. "Because you're always busy, and when I get sick, you look away, and when I cry, you call someone else. I thought, maybe you don't want me around. Maybe you want someone to take me." Maya placed her hand gently over Laya's. "Sweetheart, listen to me. Your father hasn't stopped wanting you. Not for a single moment. He just doesn't always know how to show it." Thomas swallowed hard, his eyes fixed on his daughter. For once, he didn't argue. He didn't correct. He listened. "Laya," he said finally, his voice hushed, "I've made mistakes. I thought I was protecting you. I thought, if I worked harder, built more, you'd be safe. But I see now what I missed. I see what you've been carrying alone." The girl sniffled, her small shoulders trembling. Thomas took a step closer, kneeling down slowly until his eyes met hers. His expensive suit creased, his polished shoes silent against the carpet. "You are my daughter," he said, his gray eyes softer than Maya had ever seen. "And there is no world where I ever send you away. Do you understand? You are mine. Always." Maya sat still, watching the scene unfold like a thread finally pulling through a tangled knot. She had never imagined Thomas Grayson bending like this, never imagined him letting the silence break into truth. Laya blinked through her tears, whispering, "Then why didn't you say it before?" Thomas exhaled, his forehead pressing briefly to his daughter's. "Because I thought you already knew, and because I was wrong." The girl leaned into him, her small frame trembling but steadying against his chest. For the first time, Maya saw him hold her, not like a fragile responsibility, but like a father clutching the most precious part of his world. Maya felt her own throat tighten. She had been a bridge tonight, nothing more, nothing less. But in that role, she had witnessed something that numbers and meetings could never create: connection. As Thomas carried Leia toward the door, the girl looked back at Maya, her eyes brighter than before. "Thank you, Miss Maya," she whispered. Maya smiled softly. "You don't have to thank me, sweetheart. Just keep telling the truth." When the office finally emptied, Maya stood by the window alone. The city pulsed beneath her, restless, glowing, alive. She placed her hand against the glass and whispered to herself, "This is why I'm here. Not for the paycheck, not for the tower, for moments like this." And for the first time in weeks, she no longer thought about quitting. She thought about staying. The summons came on a Monday morning, the kind of morning where the city felt gray and unforgiving, rain streaking down the glass walls of Grayson Tower. Maya Williams entered the boardroom and immediately felt it, tension thick enough to choke on. Nora Silver was already there, poised at the long table, papers neatly stacked in front of her. The executives looked restless, impatient. Thomas Grayson sat at the head, his face unreadable, his eyes sharper than usual. Nora rose smoothly, her voice cool, deliberate. "Members of the board," she began, "we are here today because of a growing concern. Ms. Maya Williams is steering this company away from stability and into dangerous territory. Her initiatives are naive, unsustainable, and, frankly, an emotional liability." The words sliced through the room like glass. Maya's breath caught, but she didn't move. She let Nora continue, every syllable striking harder. She disregards numbers. She replaces measurable outcomes with anecdotes. This is not community engagement. It is chaos dressed up as compassion. If we allow this to continue, we risk the integrity of Grayson Technologies itself. Some of the executives nodded, murmuring in agreement. Others looked uneasy. Nora's eyes flicked to Maya for a fraction of a second, sharp and cold. The message was clear. This is war. Thomas Grayson leaned forward, fingers steepled. Nora, you've made your case. What do you propose? Nora's smile was thin. An internal review, a full audit of Miss Williams's methods. If her work holds up, fine. If not, we cut losses before reputational damage spreads. The board whispered among themselves. Maya's pulse thundered in her ears. An audit. It wasn't just oversight. It was a weapon, designed to bury her under suspicion, to strip her of authority, to erase every bit of progress she had fought for. Thomas looked toward Maya at last. You'll be given the chance to defend your work. His tone was level, but his eyes held something more. Show them. When the meeting ended, Nora brushed past Maya in the corridor. She didn't stop walking, didn't raise her voice. She only whispered as she passed, just loud enough for Maya to hear. You're finished. Maya clenched her fists. For a moment, the temptation to break, to give in, burned hot. But then she thought of Laya's small voice confessing her fear. She thought of the grandmother with the flashlight, the children painting their dreams on battered fences. This wasn't just her fight, it was theirs. That night, instead of collapsing at her kitchen table, Maya Williams opened her notebook and began making calls. She called Carlos at the rec center. She called the young mother with the toddler. She called the pastor, the teacher, the neighbor who had spoken about broken swings. And slowly the responses came. Letters, dozens of them, then hundreds, written in careful handwriting, typed on old computers, scrawled on lined paper torn from notebooks. A grandmother wrote, "Because of Maya Williams, my grandkids can walk to the bus without fear." A father wrote, "She listened when no one else would. For once, we were not invisible." A teenager wrote, "Miss Maya came to our street. She didn't take pictures. She asked questions. She made us feel like we matter." Maya spread them across her tiny kitchen table, the papers overlapping, forming a patchwork of truth. She sat back, tears welling. These weren't just offenses. They were witnesses. Proof that what she carried wasn't chaos. It was change. When the audit came, she wouldn't walk in empty-handed. She would carry the voices of her people with her, and Nora Silver would finally understand. Maya Williams wasn't just one woman. She was an echo of many. The boardroom was colder than usual. Bright lights overhead, polished table gleaming like glass, every seat filled with skeptical eyes. Maya Williams stood at one end, her hands resting on a folder that suddenly felt far too small, far too fragile. Nora Silver sat across from her, immaculate as always, her expression serene but sharp, like a blade waiting to cut. Around her, the members of the board whispered, tapping pens, shuffling papers, the sound of judgment sharpening in the air. Thomas Grayson sat at the head, his gaze steady on Maya. He had not spoken since the meeting began. One of the board members cleared his throat. "Ms. Williams, the review has revealed inconsistencies. We see passion, yes. But where is proof? Where is the measurable return? Why should this company gamble its reputation on your untested approach?" A murmur of agreement rippled around the table. All eyes turned to her. This was it. She could defend herself with numbers, with softened answers. She could play their game, or she could speak the truth. Maya drew in a breath, her voice quiet but steady. "I could give you projections. I could dress this in the language you prefer, but that would be a lie. What I have is not numbers. What I have is people." Nora Silver leaned forward, her smile faint. "People don't pay dividends, Ms. Williams. Companies are built on data, not sentiment." Maya met her gaze and did not look away. "Companies may be built on data, but communities are built on trust. And without trust, every number you chase is meaningless." The room shifted. Some board members frowned, Others leaned back, unimpressed. But before Nora could press her advantage, Maya opened her folder. Letters spilled out across the table. Page after page, handwritten and typed, overlapping like a mosaic. "Here is your data," Maya said softly. The grandmother's words, the father's testimony, the teenager's note. Executives reached for the pages. Murmurs grew louder, but Maya wasn't finished. She reached for the small drive in her pocket, sliding it toward the assistant at the projector. "Play it." The screen lit up. A shaky video appeared. Children in bright coats walking beneath a new street lamp, laughing as they splashed through puddles. A mother speaking directly into the camera. "For the first time, I don't fear walking my daughter home at night." The images rolled on. Neighbors repainting benches, families gathering at the rec center dinner, kids holding signs that read, "We belong." The boardroom, so sharp with judgment minutes earlier, had fallen silent. When the video ended, the silence stretched, thick, electric, unbroken. Maya stood tall, her voice trembling but clear. "This isn't sentiment. This isn't chaos. This is proof that when people are seen, they rise. And when they rise, they don't just change their neighborhoods. They change everything." One of the executives whispered, almost to himself, "They trust her." Another leaned forward, studying the letters again. "This is real." Thomas Grayson finally rose from his seat. He let the silence breathe a moment longer, then spoke, his voice steady, commanding. "Ms. Williams has done something this company has failed to do for years. She has turned numbers into lives and lives into trust. This," he gestured toward the scattered letters, the glowing screen, "is our future. If anyone here cannot see that, you are in the wrong room." A ripple passed across the board. The atmosphere had shifted. No longer dismissal, now uncertainty, curiosity, even respect. Nora Silver's smile faltered, just slightly. Her hands tightened around her folder. Maya felt her chest loosen, her breath catch. For the first time, she saw possibility in their eyes, not because she had argued, but because she had shown them what was undeniable. She gathered the letters, her voice low but strong. "You asked for proof. I brought voices, and voices once heard cannot be silenced." When she left the boardroom, the hall felt different, lighter, alive. The battle was not over, but tonight she had won a piece of the war. When Maya Williams entered the boardroom the following week, the air was different. Not sharp, not hostile. For the first time, there was something else. Acceptance. The chairman cleared his throat, glancing down the long, polished table. "After a review of Miss Williams' presentation, the board has voted. The story's first initiative will proceed." For a moment, Maya couldn't breathe. She had expected another fight, another wave of skepticism, but instead, approval. She scanned the faces around the table. No laughter, no dismissive smirks. Some board members even nodded at her, small acknowledgments of respect. Across the room, Thomas Grayson stood, his expression steady, but his eyes softer than usual. "Then it's settled," he said. "We move forward." Applause didn't erupt. It wasn't that kind of room, but the shift was real. Maya felt it in the way the atmosphere loosened, the way the executives leaned back instead of forward, the way pens were set down instead of sharpened. For the first time, Maya Williams had not only spoken in this room, she had been heard. When the meeting adjourned, Maya gathered her papers, her hands trembling with relief. She turned slightly, half expecting the sharp figure of Nora Silver to brush past her with one more whisper, one more wound. But the chair where Nora usually sat was empty. Maya frowned, scanning the room. Nora's folder was gone. Her pen, her notebook, even her glass of water, cleared away as though she had never been there at all. "Where's Nora?" Maya asked quietly, glancing toward one of the assistants. The young woman shrugged. "She left before the vote. Didn't say a word." Maya lingered at the door, unsettled. Nora Silver had fought her at every turn, shadowed her every step. And now, nothing? Disappeared without a trace? Relief mixed with unease in her chest. She should have been celebrating. She should have been smiling. But the silence where Nora should have been felt louder than any applause. Victory? or something else. That night, Maya returned home with takeout cartons and 2 bottles of soda. Malik greeted her at the door, wide-eyed. "You're smiling," he teased. "That means good news?" Maya laughed, setting the food on the kitchen table. "The board said yes. Stories first is official." Malik whooped, pumping his fist in the air. "See? I told you. You belong in that tower." Their mother shuffled out from her bedroom, leaning on the doorway, her oxygen machine humming softly behind her. "My girl," she whispered, her voice raspy but proud. "You did it." Dinner that night was laughter, clinking glasses, Malik's jokes about being her future campaign manager. For a little while, the weight lifted. For a little while, it felt like the story had found its happy ending. But later, when the apartment had grown quiet, Maya sat by the window, staring out at the city lights. Somewhere in the distance, the tower glowed. Somewhere out there, Nora Silver had vanished into the dark. And in her chest, Maya felt the uneasy truth. Stories don't end with victory. They end with what comes after. It was a Tuesday morning when the storm broke. Maya Williams was in her office at Grayson Tower, reviewing schedules for the next story's first dinner, when Carlos burst in with a folded newspaper in his hand. His face was pale, his voice tight. "You need to see this." Maya took the paper, unwrapping it with a frown. The headline leapt out in bold letters. "Silver Industries launches Community First Initiative." Her eyes darted down the column. The words were painfully familiar. Listening sessions, neighborhood dinners, youth workshops. But the name attached was not hers. It was Nora Silver. Maya's breath caught. She scanned faster. The article praised Nora's leadership, her innovative vision for corporate responsibility. A glossy photo showed her standing at a podium, smiling that same practiced smile, with executives clapping in the background. It was Maya's idea. Her work, her heart, repackaged as a public relations stunt. Her hands trembled around the paper. "She didn't disappear," Maya whispered. "She defected." By afternoon, the news had spread everywhere. Screens in the lobby ran glowing reports of Silver Industries. Commentators praised the boldness of their campaign. Social media feeds buzzed with hashtags, praising Nora Silver as a visionary. Inside Grayson Tower, the mood soured. Some employees whispered openly, "Didn't Grayson just start the same thing? Why is Silver Industries getting all the credit?" Others muttered about investors who might question their authenticity now that a competitor was ahead. In the boardroom that evening, the executives looked at Maya with tight expressions. "We can't afford to lose ground," one warned. "If their campaign overshadows us, we'll look like imitators." Maya clenched her jaw. She knew what Nora had done. It wasn't about community. It was about optics. She had taken a living movement and turned it into a brand. "She's using people's pain as marketing," Maya said quietly, her voice steady but burning. "Maybe so," one executive replied. "But if it works, it works." Maya left the meeting with her stomach twisting. The war wasn't just inside this tower anymore. It was outside on every screen, in every headline. That night, Maya sat at the rec center. The walls still smelled of fresh paint from the kids' mural, the one that read, "We belong." Families trickled in for the evening meal, laughing, trading stories. The warmth here felt worlds away from the cold headlines glowing across the city. She watched a little boy hand a drawing to his grandmother. It was a street with lamps shining bright. "Look, Nana," he said proudly. "That's our block now." Maya's throat tightened. Nora Silver could copy her words. She could steal her framework, brand it, polish it, sell it. But she couldn't fake this. She couldn't fake trust. She couldn't fake gratitude that was lived, not staged. Maya pulled out her notebook and wrote slowly, deliberately. "Goodness is not a trophy. Goodness is not a headline. Goodness is something you fight for every single day." She looked at the families gathered, the laughter echoing off the worn walls, the children chasing each other between folding chairs. And she understood. This was the work, not the headlines, not the numbers, not the praise. Every day, goodness needed protecting, and she would protect it. The first night the lamps flickered on, the neighborhood gathered as if witnessing fireworks. Children ran down the sidewalks, their shadows stretching long and playful under the soft golden glow. Parents stood on porches with folded arms, nodding to one another with quiet relief. An old man tapped his cane against the pavement, whispering, "Finally, finally safe again." Maya Williams stood at the corner, her coat wrapped tight around her shoulders, watching as a grandmother clasped her granddaughter's hand. "Look, baby," the woman said softly. "See how the lights follow us home now?" The girl giggled, raising her arms to the night sky as if catching the stars themselves. Carlos stepped up beside Maya, his tired face brightened by the glow. "They're not just lights," he said. "They're promises. People believe again." Maya swallowed hard, her eyes stinging. This was not a glossy campaign, not a stage ribbon cutting. This was change you could feel beneath your feet. This was new life blooming in cracked sidewalks. The following Saturday, the rec center was packed. Folding tables lined the hall, the air rich with the scent of roasted chicken, cornbread, and peach cobbler. Volunteers from Grayson Technologies ladled soup into bowls, while teenagers passed out crayons and sketch pads for younger children. At the front, a mural of community dreams stretched across a canvas, drawings of safe streets, busy parks, families sitting together in peace. Maya Williams moved from table to table, listening more than speaking. A father told her about walking his son home without fear. A teacher shared that her students had written essays about hope instead of violence. An elderly woman whispered that she hadn't stepped outside after dark in years, until last night. Maya bent down to a little girl who offered her a drawing. "It's you," the child said proudly. "See? You're holding a light." Maya laughed softly, touched the paper, and whispered, "No, sweetheart. It's all of you holding it. I'm just standing with you." Laughter echoed. Plates clinked. For the first time in a long time, the rec center didn't feel like a shelter. It felt like a celebration. Later that evening, Maya stood in Thomas Grayson's office. The city skyline stretched behind him, glass gleaming, but his gaze wasn't on the towers. It was on the photo of his daughter, smiling, bright under the glow of the new lamps. He turned to Maya, his voice lower, stripped of formality. "I should thank you, not for the reports, not for the numbers, for her." His eyes softened. "You gave me back my daughter's smile." Maya's throat tightened. For a moment, words escaped her. Then she whispered, "She gave it back herself. I just stood in the rain long enough to notice." Thomas nodded, silent, and for once no business language passed between them. Just two people who had both learned that power without love was empty. When Maya left the tower that night, she didn't feel taller because of the title on her office door. She didn't feel stronger because of boardroom approval. She felt steady because of what she carried. The trust of people who believed in her, the laughter of children under safe lights, the voices of neighbors who finally knew they were not invisible. And as she walked past the glowing lamps, Maya Williams whispered to herself, "My strength was never in a position. My strength is in their trust." The apartment was quieter these days. The oxygen machine no longer hummed with the same urgency. It still whirred softly in the corner, but Gloria Williams was stronger now. She sat by the window, her blanket tucked around her shoulders, a gentle smile spreading as she watched the street lamps glow outside. Malik Williams paced the living room, a letter clutched in his hand. He was trying to act casual, but his grin betrayed him. "Full scholarship," he said at last, unable to keep it in any longer. "They accepted me. I'm in." Maya Williams froze, the dish towel still in her hand. "Say it again," she whispered. Malik laughed, waving the letter like a victory flag. "I'm going to college, Maya. They said yes." Gloria clapped her hands weakly, her eyes wet. "My babies," she said softly. "You're building a life I only dreamed of." Maya wrapped her arms around her brother, laughter and tears tangled in her throat. For years she had carried weight that felt unbearable. Tonight it didn't vanish, but it shifted. For once it felt like hope carried them instead. Later that evening, after Malik had gone out to celebrate with friends and her mother had drifted to sleep, Maya sat alone at the small wooden table. The same table where bills had once piled up, where impossible choices had weighed her down, where she had stared at an envelope that could have broken her or built her. She opened her worn notebook, the one she had carried through meetings, into neighborhoods, into the rain. She uncapped her pen and began to write, her hand steady. Goodness doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to prove itself with numbers or fight for headlines. Goodness just stays. It stays when the world fractures. It stays when trust is thin. It stays quiet, steady, beside you, when everything else begins to fall apart. She paused, the pen lingering on the page. Then she wrote one last line. And maybe that's all we were ever asked to do. To stay, to stand, to be light when the dark feels endless. She closed the notebook, exhaled slowly, and let the silence settle around her like a promise. The next afternoon, the neighborhood gathered again. The lamps flickered on one by one, halos of gold across the wet pavement. Children sprawled across the side of the rec center wall, painting with bright brushes. The mural grew wider, fuller, brighter, hands holding hands. Homes with shining windows, children laughing beneath trees that stretched tall and strong. In the center, words emerged in bold, uneven letters. We are together. Maya Williams stood at the edge, paint smudged across her fingers, her coat flecked with color. She didn't direct, didn't correct. She simply stood among them, one voice in a chorus, one light among many. As the mural took shape, laughter echoed off the walls, and the lamps glowed brighter, as if even the city itself leaned in to listen. Maya looked up at the glow, then down at the children's paint-stained hands. Her heart whispered the truth she now knew. The story was never hers alone. It belonged to everyone who had chosen to keep showing up, to keep holding on, to keep building light when shadows threatened to win. And as dusk deepened, the mural shining fresh with color, the lamps burning steady, Maya Williams smiled. Because goodness didn't end. It lived on. In them. In her. In all of them. Together.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the bell so you won't miss what's next.